Hello and welcome to Victoria's Cantina, where today we're having a look at the Hasbro Star Wars The Black Series Archive Darth Maul 6-inch figure. Recently picked this up at a local Walmart. They just started hitting here in the US, and I like this concept of an archive line. We haven't featured it on the channel before, but I really think that it's a great idea to get out some of the older Black Series figures with updated paint apps. I think that's a pretty bright move, especially considering the going rate some of these figures were being sold at on the secondary market. And this goes back to San Diego Comic-Con, and they hinted that they were developing a greatest hits type line.
So are there any plans to reissue some of the older 6-inch figures like Darth Maul, Boba Fett, Anakin Skywalker?
Yeah, we've been talking about that a lot lately, especially since we have new fans getting into Black Series and they can't access the figures from Fall 13 and the early days. So we've been discussing doing sort of a greatest hits collection, or different ways of, from solid pack perspective online, getting those figures recirculated. So I'd expect to see something in 2018 and beyond, getting some of those earlier figures out there.
So here we are, 2019. Darth Maul is a reality back in Black Series for the first time in 6 years. I actually reviewed that figure back in 2013, and I will be sure to bring it in a little while. That way we can compare it and see if there are any huge differences between them. But first I want to talk about this packaging. So this archive series has a black themed packaging. I mean, it's still the Black Series. It has some silver on it and nice artwork on the bottom. So it still showcases the figure quite well. And I really do like how you can hang these, whereas most of the Black Series obviously is just boxes. Here at the back, you get that nice artwork once again of Darth Maul. You can also see the original release of Darth Maul back from 2013. And I don't know about you guys, but I definitely prefer this archive style packaging. So it says, the evil Sith apprentice Darth Maul engages in a fierce lightsaber duel with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And that's actually the very same write-up from the 2013 figure. So Hasbro Disney, and if you want to look at the bottom, there is your UPC and some of the accessories. The other head you can see there on the side, but you can't really see it just looking at the box straight on, which is kind of a bummer if you wanted to compare paint apps. This looked pretty cool, seeing the 3 releases of Darth Maul in the Black Series line, starting with the original and then the Star Wars Celebration exclusive 20th anniversary Darth Maul, and finally the newly released archive Darth Maul. Which packaging is your favorite? Alright, so here is Darth Maul out of the packaging, and as with before, it's a pretty nice looking figure. One of the things that kind of bothered me from the very beginning is how he's kind of looking downward. There's not really a way to pose his head because it is built into the cloak that he's wearing and it's connected to his hood. But that aside, just as a figure you could have on your shelf, I think it looks pretty good. From the side, you can see him kind of hunched over. But it still looks pretty good. In the film, obviously, he was kind of, walking around with his head bowed a little bit. So it kind of fits. The robes themselves are sculpted pretty nicely. Probably not as good as they could do in 2019, but for 2013, this was pretty darn good. And they are a little bit shiny, a little bit glossy, and that was also an issue with the original release. You still get all the same accessories you had before, so you're not missing anything if you don't get the new Darth Maul, but at the same time, you don't get the updated facial paint applications. And looking at the figure here, you can see that he looks pretty good up close. Now, he's still kind of looking a little bit down, so we'll just tilt him a little bit so you can see him better. And he's pretty nice. One thing that you see on some of these photoreal Black Series figures is that the eyes are a little bit softly painted. There's not a whole lot of definition to the eyes, like the iris and those areas. That kind of looks to be the case here. Whereas if we bring in the original, you can see that there's more definition around the eyes, but it also doesn't look quite as realistic. So that is certainly something of note. But I think that by and large, it works better because it is a little bit more realistic. And, that's obviously what we're going for. So yeah, it looks really nice how it's, just all kind of connected. It's seamless and you don't have any interruptions with articulation. So yeah, it is a little waxy looking. It is a little bit glossy, but at the same time, it does have a pretty finished look about it. So we can go ahead and remove this and we'll get a better look at the figure underneath. All right, so here is Maul with the standard head applied to the body, and we get a much better look at the overall aesthetics of the figure. And It looks really good. I think they did a good job with the proportions on this one. Again, it's the same figure as before, so there's not a whole lot new I can say about it that I didn't say back in 2013, but by and large, they did a pretty good job with the aesthetics. Even with this head, you can see that he's still kind of hunched over a little bit, so I guess that's just a design decision they decided to take with the figure. The plastic is still a little bit shiny compared to what I would have preferred and compared to a lot of what they're doing these days with Black Series. But again, I guess they couldn't change everything about the figure, but even some slight improvements are improvements in my book. Taking a closer look at the figure's head, you can see the photoreal paint technique that was applied. This primarily affects the eyes. There's not a whole lot of contouring that was added to the face like they usually do with Black Series and photoreal, but that kind of makes sense. Obviously, we're not dealing with a typical skin tone here. He is red and black, so it's a little bit different than the approach they normally take with photoreal techniques, but it still looks pretty good. I think one of the biggest issues I have is that just the way they did the horns, like they're very blunt looking. They should be a little more defined, a little sharper. So that does stand out. I also feel like the face sculpt isn't the best. It could be a little bit better. It's not bad, just it looks like it was sculpted in 2013, which there are better face sculpts from 2013, but I don't think this was like one of the best ones. It was better at the time than it is now. But you know, they could have given it a brand new head and it would have looked a lot better. But it is better. Like I said, better is better. And yeah, same for the costume. It looks pretty good. It does have some very nice sculpting on it. If you look at the chest area, his robes are very nicely textured. There's some very fine detailing going on there. And you don't get that quite as much as on the sleeves as you do there on those tabards that are kind of coming down off his body. The belt is also very glossy. And again, there's still a lot of glossy plastic that was implemented here. So that is noticeable. And you also do get a little bit of soft goods here for the skirt. That way it doesn't hinder articulation. And the boots are also quite shiny. Got some peg holes in the bottom. So speaking of articulation, it's the same as before. You do get a ball pin at the very top, and that is connected to a bend. That way you can get a very nice bend with the figure. You can turn the head side to side. You can cock it a little bit to the right and left. Insert molded joints at both of the shoulders. They are a little bit stiff on this figure, but you do get some pretty good movement with it. 90 degrees essentially for the elbows, and you can also rotate them. Bend and swivel at the wrists as well. It goes forward and back, rotate. And the other one, this one actually goes up and down and rotate. Here at the torso, you do have a nice ball joint, so you do get some pretty good movement with the figure. It's actually pretty nice. Here at the hips, we also have insert molded connections, so it doesn't do a great split, but it's not hindered or anything by the robes, and that's where the soft goods do come into place pretty well. So you also do get a cut here at the thigh. You get double bends at the knees, and at the ankles, you're going to have a nice rocker swivel. So all in all, it's a pretty nicely articulated figure, very much in line even to this day with usually what we see with Black Series, even though there have been some improvements with fluidity and plastic. So this holds up pretty well for a 2013 figure. And once again, you do get the double-bladed lightsaber. It comes in two pieces. You have a little peg on the left one here, and then a socket on the right. And there's only one way that it can go in, so you just connect it like so. You got to push on it a little bit. And you can see it looks a little bit warped. This was also an issue with the original release. So when I hold it like this, the blades look kind of crooked. But that is just because they're still using this really pliable plastic on these hilts, which is kind of a shame. I mean, it really shouldn't been like that. I would have thought that at the very least they would have made an improvement with the materials on this figure, but sadly that doesn't seem to be the case. You can still take the blades out. You still got to yank on them super, super hard in order to get them out, but that's basically what you're left with once you do that, and then you push them back in like that. The lightsaber can still be pegged into the belt just right there. You just got to find the socket and push it in. Obviously, you wouldn't have the blades on, but that gives you the idea of how you would do that. You also still get the macro binoculars, and they're pretty much unchanged from the original release. Some of this weathering paint might be slightly different on the new one, but for the most part, it's painted very similarly to the original. Just like the lightsabers, they look essentially unchanged from the original incarnation. Here's a side-by-side comparison of both releases of Darth Maul, the 2013 one on the left, the 2019 one on the right, and you can see that they're more or less the same. Obviously, the photoreal is one thing, but the other thing I want to say is that I feel like the new one stands a little bit better, and I don't know if that's just because of posing and the packaging. With the original one, maybe it was just posed in a way that kind of warped it a little bit. Also, the sides of the cloak kind of stick out a little bit. Not really sure what's up with that. But by and large, the silhouette looks a little bit better on the new one. From the back, kind of the same thing. I would say that the new one is a little bit less waxy looking than the original, which is something that I do appreciate. And then once again, you get the photoreal on the new release, whereas the old one just has the traditional paint apps on it used by placing a mask over the figure's face. So I do feel like the original one does have more defined eyes. They look a little more colorful, but the new one does look more realistic to me. So I would give the edge to the 2019 archive version. And once again, we have the 2013 Black Series Maul on the left and the 2019 on the right. And again, you have those more defined eyes with the original release, but then you have the more realistic eyes with the new version. Other than that, they look pretty much the same. Even the glossy plastic is more or less the same on both figures. Even looking at the back, I would say maybe the plastic's a little bit more dull in the new release, but for all intents and purposes, they're virtually unchanged. Bringing them in a bit closer, you can definitely see why they call it photoreal. I mean, it just looks a little bit better. Is it really photoreal though? Not on this figure. Some of them are a lot more realistic, but I definitely do see it as a net improvement overall. All right, and I know a lot of you want to see a comparison with the SH Figuarts Darth Maul. So on the right, there is our SH Figuarts Maul. And it's pretty obvious, at least to me, that Hasbro still has a long way to go to catch up with what SH Figuarts did, at least with the Darth Maul figure. Hasbro's come pretty close on some releases, but not with Darth Maul. That was actually my very first SH Figuarts purchase, and you can see why. It looks phenomenal. I think it's still one of their best. To me, it's just no contest. The SH Figuarts wins this round by a long shot, and it really does look like a miniaturized Darth Maul. The Hasbro one still looks like a toy. Even if it's a little bit better than the original, it still looks like a toy. And then here's the alternate head that the SH Figuarts Darth Maul comes with, and he looks very menacing. And even then, I would say this is still a better looking head than the Black Series figure. All right, so another thing that I noticed here, and I think this is probably a defect. I haven't looked at any other reviews, so I can't really say whether or not this is exclusive to mine or if it's genuinely a widespread defect. But if I go ahead and pull in the brand new archive Darth Maul right here, and you look at his facial stripes, you will see that the ones right here under the eyes, like you kind of have like that letter C and then that letter C, for lack of better words, they don't connect to the eyes, whereas if you bring in the original one, those stripes are connected to the eye area, like to the black underneath the eyes, making it look a little bit more dynamic. I think the original one had done it right, because if I bring in the Figuarts Maul, you can see that those stripes also connect to the eyes. So I feel like this is just a defect with this Maul. Even if you look at the head with the cloak on it, the stripes are, well, the left one anyway, is connected to the eyes. And then the cloak on the original Black Series, again, those stripes are connected. So it definitely seems like there's an issue with this. Again, I don't know if it's just mine or if this is how all of the archive Darth Mauls are. So let me know in the comments if you have the figure, if yours has this issue as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so there you have it. This is the Hasbro Star Wars The Black Series Archive Darth Maul. Overall, you guys, it is very nice that Hasbro has brought Darth Maul back. It's nice that more people will have an opportunity to add him to their collections, especially if they weren't collecting back in 2013. For $20, it's really a pretty good deal, especially when you consider how much bang you get for your buck in terms of all the accessories and the interchangeable head with the cloak and all that stuff. It's all really good stuff. The problem is that it's not quite worth the sum of its parts, meaning that the execution on certain things isn't quite up to snuff. A new head sculpt would have greatly benefited this figure, and then applied the photoreal to that. I think this would have made it a clear winner between this and the SH Figuarts. They didn't do that. They also didn't dull down some of the shiny aspects of the figure, which is a long-standing issue I've had with older Black Series figures. The lightsaber is also still very rubbery. It doesn't really sit straight, so that's another issue there. But if you want a Darth Maul figure that comes with quite a bit of stuff, I mean, this is a really good way to go. If you want a higher-end Darth Maul, though, I really don't think there's beating the SH Figuarts in the 6-inch scale at this point in time, so definitely an option as well if you're able to spend the money on that figure. Alright my friends, I'd like to thank you for tuning into this video. Let me know your thoughts on the archive Darth Maul down below. What do you think about it? How does it stack up? Will you be adding it to your collection? As always, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to Victoria's Cantina. Until next time, bye bye.